these magic pill, it kills the appetite. Killing appetite is a type of death. Not only they lose pleasure in eating, they lose pleasure in anything in life.
First, these companies create the diseases, and now they're like, hey, this is the right time for us to focus on the medication. We're the product.
I remember trying fenfluramine, which reduced the weight by 4 to 5 kgs. It took around 34 long years for us to realize that this drug was causing side effects on heart.
People have done everything that there is out there, but they still can't lose the weight. And it's not possible. In reality, we all know deep downside, we've not tried. Because of those options that are out there so readily available.
Today, we dive into Magic Pill by Johann Hari, a gripping, urgent, and deeply human exploration of one of the most talked about medical breakthroughs in recent years, the rise of the new weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy. But Magic Pill isn't just about the science, it's about the moral, cultural, and systemic questions these drugs raise. Johann challenges us to think about how we got here to a world where obesity has skyrocketed, where billions of dollars are spent on treatment rather than prevention, and where we often look to quick pharmaceutical fixes for deeply entrenched social problems. The book is also a window into the decades-long process of drug discovery, the scientists, doctors, and patients who've contributed to something that is now reshaping lives and industries. It reveals the profound impact these drugs can have, especially for those struggling with serious health issues, while not shying away from ethical dilemmas like what happens when people start using these drugs for cosmetic reasons or as a shortcut rather than for medical necessity. Magic Pill invites us to grapple with the reality that no drug exists in a vacuum. They reflect the societies that create and consume them. And so we ask, how do we create a world where the magic pill isn't the only hope? What does it mean to change the system that makes us sick in the first place? I'm really excited to have two amazing guests to discuss this book with me. My first guest is someone who brings equal parts science, strength, and sass to everything she does. Dr. Bhakti Naik is the founder and chief consultant of Ikigai Health in Singapore, where she helps people become the best version of themselves through movement, mindset, and meaningful change. A former nationally ranked badminton player, Bhakti is a doctor of physical therapy with a specialization in orthopedics and sports medicine, and she's also a certified nutritionist and youth fitness trainer. Her approach is rooted in empowering people to understand their bodies, build sustainable habits, and optimize both physical and mental performance. If you've ever trained with her, you'll know she's a bit of a terror in the gym, but in the most motivating, no-nonsense way. We're so excited to welcome her here to the Changemakers Book Club. And our second guest today is Dr. Suraj Prakash Sondhi, a highly respected physician with nearly 5 decades of clinical experience. Throughout his long and distinguished career, he has treated thousands of patients, especially those managing diabetes and obesity-related challenges. His expertise spans medical and surgical interventions, including bariatric surgery, and now the growing field of weight loss medications. Dr. Sondhi is also a published researcher, with recent work on weight gain after bariatric surgery featured in the Clinical Journal of Physicians. He's also taught medical students for over 30 years. A firm believer in holistic health, he maintains a personal practice of yoga and meditation. And beyond the clinic, he shares stories and insights on his Hindi podcast, Chai Pe Gupshup, blending warmth, wisdom, and conversations about health, life, and everything in between. We are so pleased to have him join us today. Great. Dr. Sondhi, let me start with you and your quick thoughts on the book first. What did you think while you read the book?
Thank you, Gunjali, for calling me on your podcast and comparing it with other books which I've read about things in medicine. I found this book has information about new drug very correctly, and they have dealt with pros and cons in a very great detail. But it lacks the entertainment quality which I saw in Discovery of Insulin book. But it was much better than some of the books which I've read about cancer and other things, which are very voluminous and very big, and sometimes gets very boring for a normal individual. So it's in between that. It serves the purpose, though. It serves the purpose of providing correct information with balanced viewpoints of the pros and cons of this drug.
And I think it makes it so much more interesting because Johann is going through his own journey with the drug, right? It's not really to be taken like a medical account, but sort of a personal narrative on how he is going through the journey of taking the medicine and discovering for himself what that means for him. Bhakti, what did you think?
I agree with Dr. Sondhi that it's not as detail-oriented as many of the other medical books are. However, I don't think that was the purpose of it anyways. I genuinely think that today, with how much little time each and every one of us has, and the need to know every single thing that is out there, this book gives a very good feel of a little bit of everything, and then allows the reader to take what either they're lacking in or what he is trying to convey to make a movement or a change, but not giving opinions that this is what you should be doing, which is what usually is the case with a lot of the books, right? They'll only give a one-sided approach. He's tried to stay neutral, saying, hey, I've experienced it. I've tried it out. However, these are the positives and negatives. This is where it's practiced. This is where it's not practiced. This is where it'll come beneficial. This is where it will not come beneficial. And then it allows you to decide, okay, where are you in that whole field? So I quite liked that approach to his book.
And I think sometimes books written by journalists such as Johann can have that sort of investigative quality. They tend to give a lot of information and kind of leave the reader to kind of decide where they are in their opinion. I think, Dr. Sondhi, let me get a little bit deeper into one of the most interesting aspects of the book for me, which is basically the drugs and how they are discovered and how we have come to this point of the discovery of these drugs. Given how long it takes for new drugs to be researched and tested and approved, I mean, these new weight loss medications like Ozempic and Mounjaro are nothing short of a breakthrough. And you were mentioning the other book on insulin by the same name. But, you know, as someone who spent decades treating patients with obesity and diabetes, how excited are you about what these drugs represent in terms of treatment options?
We are extremely excited. I think GLP-1 agonists have created a buzz which not many other medicines did in the recent past. If you want to know the reason, I'll have to give you the background, because the enormity of an event can be better appreciated if you have the context. So let me give you the context. When I started practicing about 4 decades back, obesity was regarded as nothing more than a cosmetic problem caused by an aberration in the lifestyle in an individual who failed to exercise discipline in his eating and exercising. But gradually we realized that it was much more than that, with great consequences in metabolism, mechanics of the body, and increased cancers. In the last 2 decades, it became a disease, spreading faster than many other diseases. A disease which could shorten the life anywhere between 5 to 20 years. A disease which had no effective, safe, and durable treatment. We tried diet and exercise, but unfortunately it required commitment, dedication on the part of the patient, and we required some good trainers like Bhakti, which we didn't have. But as soon as the patient came out of the trials of diet and exercise, they regained back all the lost weight. And then we tried certain drugs, like I remember trying fenfluramine a lot, which reduced the weight by just a meager of around 4 to 5 kgs, but we still clung to that drug because there was no alternative. And some years down the line, we discovered that this drug had very serious side effects on cardiovascular system, like valvular effects and pulmonary arterial hypertension. And Gunjali, I want you to guess how much time did it take us to realize that it had side effects? You make a wild guess. How much time did it take us? Bhakti?
A decade?
Bhakti?
I would actually think even longer, maybe.
It took around 34 long years for us to realize that this drug was causing side effects on heart. 34 long years. And then it was withdrawn. But by that time, we had given it to thousands of patients. So that's the problem with the drugs. Some side effects come very late. The next drug was even worse. It was rimonabant, which lasted only for 1 year, and then had to be withdrawn because there were increased suicides in the patients. So that was the frustration amongst us and amongst the patients. So this was the background. In this background, GLP-1 analogs, that magic pill was born. The first drug to be approved was in 2005 semaglutide for diabetes, but we soon realized that we had a revolutionary anti-obesity drugs at our hand. Since then, more GLP-1 analogs have hit the market, and most of them are backed by well-conducted, placebo-controlled trials. Magic pill not only looks after obesity, but almost all consequences of obesity like diabetes, fatty liver, osteoarthritis knee, and obstructive sleep apnea. And to cap it up, there are bonuses too. These drugs have the potential collateral benefits, which are not yet fully proven, but they are slowly coming to the light, like improving immune system, Alzheimer's disease, reducing craving and addiction. And it's no wonder that the market value of two major companies marketing these drugs, both Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, increased from $560 billion to $1.3 trillion in just few years. So you can imagine, this is what created the excitement.
And Bhakti, I know Dr. Sondhi kind of touched on that point, but one of the very depressing parts of the book, which personally was very difficult for me to read and understand, was where he talks to an expert about research on how no diets last, and even diets have, the effect of actually returning the weight once you're not sort of consistently doing it. You always emphasize that health is not just about fixing systems, but about sustainable habits through movement, nutrition, and sleep and mindset. What do we need to do if the drug is not an option and we don't want to get to the point of taking the drug? What is it that we should be doing?
So I have a very different approach to all of these kinds of situations where I assume that the drug is not an option at all. So what do we do when there is no drug as an option? We begin to just focus and live with what it is that we have. In the most recent years, if you think about it, when COVID hit, right? What happened at that time? No matter where we were in the world, a lot of the governments were basically saying, hey, we need you to stay in your houses and not step out. But rest assured, food is going to be provided. There will be enough thing at your local grocery store, or we'll have people come deliver it, whatever it may be. However, all the aisles in grocery stores were being wiped out. It didn't matter what it was, but it was being wiped out. So when that scarcity comes into play, people begin to hoard. That's how the body also begins to feel. But if there is a surplus of stuff around us all the time, then we lose control on that whole thing. I love the fact that Dr. Sondhi talked about how weight loss drugs, it's not new. It's been there for years. And the amount of time it takes to figure out the actual effects of these drugs, in the case that he said, about 34 years. The same situation has happened with social media, phone use, where today we're waking up, oh my God, my kid is not talking to me anymore. My kid is locking themselves up in the bedroom. Whereas when it first came out, it was the best nanny that was available. Just shove the phone into the child's face and then that's what's being taken care of. But life, health, the way of living actually just boils down to simplicity. So if you bring it back down to just basics, it falls down to working on your sleep, on your nutrition, and your exercise. Why are Dr. Sondhi and me in business? Because that is not being done. It's as basic as that. Now, there are some of us who are truly passionate about it and out here to hopefully make a little bit of a change and guide you in the right direction in a natural way. But there are a lot of us who would take advantage of that and then use it to our benefit. And like we said, not only companies, but even doctors, where they know what can be advised, will easily sit and give you, hey, I'll write this prescription for such and such drug. Just go ahead and take it. Who would not want the easy way out? Every single one of us does. at some point in time. Either when we're really tired, or we're overworked, or a calamity hits, or we have an unfortunate event in our families. So if that option is given, people will take it. And the way the world is going, just like it said in the book, first these companies created the diseases. And now they're like, okay, now that we've created those diseases, hey, this is the right time for us to focus on, let's say this is the medication that's needed, and now make money in that direction. So just like it's always said, we're the product for these companies. So I loved how he put everything together, and it is absolutely true. And I can assure you it's not easy for him as he writes that prescription, but people are showing up probably in his clinic absolutely in this big obese state. Oh, I don't have control over my food, or I eat nothing but I'm putting on weight. These are the kinds of things that come up.
Absolutely. And switching gears a little bit on that note, Dr. Sondhi, there's a little bit of this guilt in the book that Johann says, where sometimes people feel like, oh, if you've gotten yourself to this state, you've gotten obese, why should you have this shortcut of a bariatric surgery or a weight loss pill, right? I think he talks a little bit about that tension socially as well. But you've worked with many patients who've benefited from bariatric surgery and now increasingly from these medications. How do you respond to that mindset? And what would you say to someone who feels like there is shame around seeking medical support for these diseases?
I deal with it in two ways. Number one, I explain it to the patient in great detail that obesity is a disease like typhoid, pneumonia, etc., which is caused by genes, social circumstances, brain, and deranged nutrient stratospheres, many of which is beyond the control of the sufferer. So you don't always is at fault. The whole system maybe is at fault. So that's what it is. Like, I give them example, like if I want to have pesticide-free veggies in India, I will probably have to grow my own veggies with water brought down from New Zealand, because the water in India has pesticide. So it's extremely difficult to do. I said, don't blame yourself. So once that patient realizes this fact, he or she outgrows these negative thoughts. The second thing which I do, which is extremely important, is that I patiently introduce all the options available with us to treat this disease, obesity. And of course, the first option comes diet and exercise. And I said, we have diet and exercise. These are the ups and downs. We have pills, magic pill. These are the ups and downs. We have bariatric surgery. These are the ups and downs. What do you want? So I want to let him decide. Many of the patients, they say, okay, I can't do diet and exercise, so get me the second option. Get me the third option, or whatever. And when they choose the option, I let them experiment with that option for 4 months, 6 months, 7 months. And I tell them, come back to me and let me assess the effect of that experiment, whether it was with diet or any other. And when they come back and we see the effect on their weight and other things, then we reassess as to where we are and how we should proceed. So giving them option, not deciding on their behalf as to what they want to do, is what convinces them to do whatever they want to do. That's what my approach.
And I can tell from personal experience that Bhakti doesn't give options.
No, in fact, it depends. No, that's very interesting you're saying that, because I choose who I give options to versus not. And it is based on the psychology of that client. And so I make some clients feel like, hey, this is an option. But then with some clients, clearly we know with who, I do not give options. And I say, this is what you got to do, and this is what is going to work. There are no other ways around it. And interestingly, only then does it work.
I want to unpack a little bit of the gut issues and the interesting facts about the gut that we read about in the book as well. And I know you work on this as well. I found it very interesting how he mentioned the foods we eat are killing the diversity of our gut microbes, and how we're supposed to have I think he mentions 30 different kinds of fruits and vegetables in a week. And all we are having is very badly processed food, which only just has like 4 ingredients: corn, wheat, meat, and soy. Do you want to
Yes.
talk a little bit about that, about food, and specifically about the gut that he brings about? And then, Dr. Sondhi, I want to explore the connection of the gut and the brain with you after that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Without us realizing, and I grew up in Africa, right? Very early on, I remember there used to be just one bread shop in our lane. And the bread would come, say, once a week when we'd get to eat that. Whereas today, it doesn't matter where we're living. I feel like Mexican food, I get to eat Mexican food. Chinese, Chinese. Indian, Indian. And a large reason for that is because a lot of that food has just been provided in a quicker, more processed manner. But of course, that processed manner makes us feel like having more and more. In the same process, now if you look, when you go on holidays, it's much harder to get vegetables and fruit. It's not impossible, but in certain countries, it's a lot harder to find vegetables and fruits on a menu. It is much easier to find some form of bread, rice in some form or the other, and meat, for that matter. Now, a lot of the milk that things are made from, the meat that has been produced, how is it that suddenly there's a surplus of all of that? Because right from the origin of where everything begins, if you feed cows corn-based stuff, they develop much faster. There is more milk production. So then we can sell it out. So it goes back to those basics. Then the same thing happens with chickens, for that matter, right? That's why there's more chicken in the market. Then it's about, oh, is it antibiotic-free or is it not antibiotic-free? There's a lot of confusion out there in the market. But again, bringing it back to basics, if you look at people who live on the mountains, it's about that variety of vegetables, fruits, that creates a good gut flora for us. So we have macronutrients, which are the basics: carbohydrates, protein, and good fat. And then we have micronutrients, which are your vitamins and the minerals. And usually, all of us on a yearly medical blood test, we go ahead and see what is it that we're lacking. And nowadays, we don't even go and feed ourselves with the actual food that provides the lack of what we have. But instead, we pop a vitamin pill for that. And the reasoning that people have been given is, oh, but the food will take a lot longer. You can't eat it in that much quantity. So it's better that you take this little pill and at least you'll get a concentrated version of it. But what if you choose to eat that balanced and in a good way with your vegetables and your fruit? It will create a good gut flora. Think of your gut as this big garden that has a lot of colorful flowers that are out there. It's going to be a lot more inviting for you to spend time there versus a barren land, where then you're going to just go ahead and try to build something over there. And I think that's just the beginning of it. And then the benefits from all of that, of course, are a lot more in that category. So should people work on the gut first? Absolutely. There's a reason why we say there is a gut feel. What is your gut instinct? So if we don't take care of that gut of ours, that's when it leads to a lot of these diseases, emotional outbursts, a lack of sleep. And now the age also doesn't matter. There are kids as early as age 5, 6. Because they've been fed that processed food, they are dealing with issues. There are many more people in today's day and age that have some form of an intolerance or an allergy to a certain food than there ever was before. Clearly, something is off. And that comes from, again, these 4 based things that are in almost every single food of ours.
And Dr. Sondhi, can I have you explain the brain-gut connection that the book talks about as well?
Well, Gunjari, this is a very exciting field, and a lot is changing in this field. When I was a student, I was told that the longest cranial nerve is vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve connects the brain to the gut. And I was told that there is one-way traffic in that nerve, that whenever you are tense, that there are chemicals secreted, and those chemicals come and play on the motility of your gut, whether they move faster or slower or whatever. But now we have realized that there is not one way, there is two-way traffic in that vagus nerve. So there are many things which are produced by gut microbiome, which travels through the vagus nerve, goes up to the mind. So it changes your mind. So not only the mind changes your gut, but the gut changes your mind. The gut microbiome produces serotonin. About 90% of serotonin hormone, which is a happy hormone, which keeps you happy, is produced by gut, while about 30% of dopamine, which is a rewarding system, is produced by gut. So if your gut bacteria are not varied kind of gut bacteria and they are not healthy, you probably will not be happy. And another thing which is now dawning on us is that because of dysfunctional gut microbiome, sometimes they make folded proteins. If the proteins are not folded, they don't get deposited in the tissues. But if they're folded, they get deposited in the tissues. So they say Alzheimer's disease is basically caused by folded proteins produced in the gut, traveling through the vagus nerve, going and getting deposited in the brain. So if you want to be happy, keep your gut happy. And on the other hand, these GLP-1 magic pill, it kills the appetite. And I like the one-liner in this book which said, killing appetite is a type of death. They lose the pleasure in eating. Not only they lose pleasure in eating, they lose pleasure in anything in life. Some of the patients, and they call it anhedonia. And Gunjali, one of the patients actually gave me a very frantic call when he was on this. He said, can you stop this drug? I said, what happened? You are losing weight, and so on and so forth. He said, no, that's not the point. He says, I've lost interest in anything. He says, I have lost interest in drinking water. I don't want to drink water. So, Gunjali, imagine if you love your morning cup of tea and one day you take that cup of tea, but you don't derive pleasure out of it, what will be your condition? So, luckily, this is seen only in a few percentage of patients on GLP-1 analogs, but this could happen.
And I think the book talks about it in terms of the positive of it, where it's being used for addiction. I think there's research coming out that says it works on alcohol and substance abuse patients, and that's kind of the positive of it. But it does make people lose their reward hormones. And so then what does that lead to? And we're still to find out more about that.
And Gunjali, in my practice of around 45, 46 years, I have seen many U-turns in the history of medicines. That a medicine which we thought was the best medicine for that particular disease was actually harming that disease. So we had made many U-turns in life, and that makes me a little skeptic. And many times it takes a very long travel to reach that U-turn. So let's enjoy as long as there is no U-turn.
That's a very good way to put it, actually, because if you think about it also, I think, and maybe you know this, Dr. Sondhi, that there was a time when doctors would prescribe patients to smoke a little because it's good for you, when cigarettes first came out. And then now look at us, right? We're in those only designated places where you're allowed to smoke. But now that's traveled on to, oh, but smoking is bad, vaping is okay. Then some countries are okay with that, some are not. It all boils down to a change in that direction, right? It's a change of, yes, the medication is working on addictions, but just like bariatric surgery, which she talks about in the book, it cuts your appetite, you're eating a lot less, but then that addiction moves to something else. You either then become an alcoholic or you become a gambler of some sorts. And I'm sure with this medication as well, as the years come, like he's saying, who knows what it's going to do.
And Bhakti, I read an article in British Medical Journal about 35, 40 years back. The title of that article was, should we use alcohol as a treatment? And at that time, we felt that alcohol in a reasonable quantity increases the HDL and protects the heart at that time. And they said, should we use it? Should we have a trial? Should we divide the whole population into two parts, give half of them alcohol and half of them no alcohol, and follow them? The only argument which is against that was that alcohol has an addiction potential, and so we are not sure how many patients in that alcohol group will become alcohol addict and will not stop at one peg. But now we know that even one peg is bad. So made U-turns.
Yeah, no, lots of U-turns. And it's interesting, again, if we look at the big picture over here, right? Who asks for a lot of these studies, majority-wise, are usually some drug company or some monopoly that is sitting up there saying, hey, let's just throw this out there. It's almost like we're the puppets that are being like, hey, let's play around with that. I remember when I used to be, whether it was in the US or even earlier than that, there was this whole movement around eggs are bad for you because they increase your cholesterol and everything. And then I moved to India. When I was living in India, I remember one fine day, new research in the US. So they've now come out saying that eggs are not really bad for you. Again, another U-turn, right? A hairpin U-turn. And the reason that had come out before is because the pharmaceutical companies wanted to make a little more money in terms of giving statins and stuff, and that's how it came out. So it's a very interesting way that these companies are going on and making that money, but we as human beings who are differentiated from animals purely because of our brains choose to not use it.
Right, and you are so right there. If you look at many of the titles of the trials, they will always be positive. Hope trial, Credence trial, excellent trial. The bias starts from trial names. They name the trials like that. And as far as this GLP-1 analogs are concerned, I must tell you that in one of the earlier studies, Sustain 6, in which they used semaglutide for type 2 diabetic patient, they found that it worsens retinopathy. So what they did in all the subsequent trials, they excluded patients who had retinopathy. So look at the bias. Look at the bias. Yeah. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt, and we got to be skeptic throughout our lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's unfortunate, but true.
And what a bias by actually naming the pill magic pill.
The magic pill.
I feel like we started the conversation about magic pill with that bias, but I'm so grateful that we have people like you, Dr. Sondhi, and Dr. Bhakti, keeping us honest and doing the change making that we need to do in this very difficult day and age where there is a crisis of obesity and there are these drugs available. And the path to sort of being healthy requires discipline and is the hard path, right? I think as we kind of wrap this up, this is a book club podcast. So I'd just like to get sort of closing thoughts from both of you on the book, whether you recommend it or not, and who should read this. So let's go with you, Dr. Sondhi, first.
I will say definitely we have to change our lifestyle. Lifestyle is the basic foundation stone of the disease which is called obesity, and even the disease which is called diabetes. That means your dietary indiscretions and other things should be controlled and exercise regular. And if you are not able to attain the desired goal after that, one can use either bariatric surgery or GLP-1 analogs drugs. With caution, we have to pick some sheet before we prescribe these drugs. That does this patient have depression, this or not, and convince ourselves and convince the patient. If you compare bariatric surgery and these GLP-1 analogs have almost come to the level of bariatric surgery. They decrease weight by almost 20 to 22%, and some individual 25%, which is as good as bariatric surgery. But it also decreases the craving, which is not decreased by bariatric surgery. In bariatric surgery, you continue to have craving because craving is not gone. So I will say these drugs are a little better than that because of that, but we are not sure prolonged use of these drugs will have what kind of side effects. So we got to keep our eyes and ear and mind open about that. And every day there are new researches which come out, and future will decide whether this was a wonderful magic pill or whether it was like fenfluramine. Change is the only constant. So I think we have to keep our eyes, ears and brain open for the new things which are happening.
Yeah, and then going to you, Bhakti, your closing thoughts and how this book has perhaps given you something to think about.
My answer is going to be very similar to what we had talked about, giving the choices. I do fear recommending the book to anyone and everyone, but then there are specific people that would pop up in my head as I was reading the various different chapters. And what I did was I actually started putting it into practice. I had the physical book, but I also got it on Audible. And even as of last night, there are certain chapters, like chapter 9, then chapter 11, I think it was the one where he goes to Japan and has that experience, either Japan 11 or 12. I heard it with both my kids. And what we would do is we would have a discussion around it in terms of get their thoughts on it, because I absolutely agree with him on that part. This has to start at the base level. You have to make these changes. I mean, Japan clearly got it right. There needs to be a nutritionist in every single school, and not just any nutritionist, but a nutritionist that actually understands the food, makes the changes, because kids look up to their teachers and their parents. A lot of what is happening nowadays is parents want to preach, but they don't want to practice. Exactly the same thing. However, they have that expectation off of their kids as well. So would I recommend the book to others? Absolutely, but I'm a little watchful about what I would recommend. So what I've started doing is people that I actually train. So day before yesterday, I had this woman in her 60s, and the chapter where he talks about the disconnection with your body, where you feel that you can treat your body any way that you want. You want it to work out like crazy, or you want to make it smoke, but you're not loving that body of yours. So you're doing everything because there is that disconnect. You don't even realize that you're torturing that body. So as you torture that body, of course it's going to gain weight, whether it's you actually eating or you actually not eating either, because then you've slowed your metabolism down. So when you make people who are in that situation listen to the chapters as it is and then just leave it there, I think people feel they have a choice. And that's what I mean by that choice. In the same way with the kids, because the kids are tired of me constantly saying, oh, this is not healthy or this is healthy. And last night, as we're listening to the chapter on Japan, my boys were sitting with the cup noodles, which they have poured hot water in. But it was brilliant because as they were listening to that, then we had a discussion over how does that food make you feel? And my older son has visited Japan 3 times. And he said, the only reason I feel like I want to go back again and again is because I love the food. And I'm like, okay, what do you like about the food? Oh, I just love the way it makes me feel. And then we were like, okay, we visit the US every year, at least once, if not twice. And again, all the car road trips, there's only junk food options along the way. So then we talked about that whole aspect. So each and every one of us will take something away from whatever chapter that there is. Now, the reason I would not readily recommend it to some people is because there's also this side where I remember him talking about some people have done everything that there is out there, but they still can't lose the weight. And it's not possible. It is just not
Bhakti disagrees.
possible. I completely disagree. We believe and we want to believe that we've done everything that is out there. But when it comes to your body, fortunately or unfortunately, that is the only thing we have control over. We do not have control over anything else in life. Not on our destiny, not on the people around us, not even on our kids, not even on our helpers, nothing. We have control over no one or nothing. But the only thing we have control over is our body. And what do? We exercise that control over our bodies when we feel out of control. And then when we can no longer even exercise that control over our bodies, whether it's by eating or not eating, then we find ways to give ourselves excuses that I tried, but it didn't work. In reality, we all know deep down inside that we've not tried, even if we want to. And because of those options that are out there so readily available, it is hard. There is no doubt it is hard. And it's much easier to sit here and say that. Do I not eat any packaged foods at all? Do I exercise every day just the way I'm telling all my clients? The answer to that is no, I don't. But somewhat of a balance for our sanity, which is only going to make us happy, I think is much needed. So I shudder from thinking if I recommend the book to some people, they may choose, depending upon what phase they are in life, to listen to that aspect of it and be like, but I don't have that choice. That's why I have to take it.
Bhakti, I would like to ask you a question. One of my friends who's a doctor, and we were having discussions, and he said, if there is a alcoholic liver disease patient and I tell him not to drink, and he comes back to me and 2-3 times and says, I can't stop. He says, I tell him not to come to me.
No,
so
you can't do that.
So I said, I'm sorry. I don't do that. I don't do that. We can't be policing. It is his choice. I will repeat it. I'll say, okay, your alcohol is troubling you a lot. Please stop it. And I'll keep on telling him again and again, but I won't say don't come to me because, we are not policemen.
Absolutely. So in fact, in a great example, the fact that he's even coming to you tells you that he's saying, I need help.
Yes, it does.
Okay? Right? He may not say it in those words. It takes a lot of effort for people to even come up forward. Now, there could be many reasons why some of them don't even come. It could be monetary. It could be because they just don't have the time because they're taking care of a lot of other stuff in their lives. It could be because they're scared, right? But the way I approach it is dig a little deeper into, just like we talk about the root cause. What is the reason that he is drinking? Maybe it's an escapism. Maybe it's just burying certain emotions down, and then work on dealing with that. Because a lot of people that drink, like I said, it's about torturing your body in whatever. For us, it comes across as torturing. For them, it comes across as, but I feel so good because now I can't think. But it is stemming from something. And if that person is coming to your doorstep, once they enter, that's what our job is. Our job is to help them in whatever capacity that we possibly can. Keeping in mind, and I wanted to make this actually earlier on as well, Gunjali, the medical field is the only field, if you think about it, that is spoken as, whenever, Dr. Sondhi, you are asked, people will say, oh, how's your practice going? What's happening with the practice today? Why is it practice? Why is it not how's your job going? Everything else is considered how's your job going, because the medical field is an evolving field. There will be new inventions. There will be discoveries. There may be some setbacks, but they will be learning in a particular way. And it will continue to be just a practice. We all don't know everything. But if you bring things again back to just the basics of how things used to be in the olden days, and we have live examples of people living in Japan, or like my grandmother who lived until the age of 94, washing her own clothes, cooking her own food. These are all basics, right? It's not new. How many people in today's day and age actually cook their own food? They don't. And he talks about this. He himself didn't. But it's never too late.
And I think on that note, we'll wrap this up. I feel like I have choices, and hopefully the choices are much better than just the magic pill or anything else. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. It was a great discussion.
Thank you, Gunjali. Thank you, Bhakti. Bye-bye.
What a fantastic conversation with my guest today. It seemed like we could go on for another hour, although I'm sure I'd lose you. One of the things I love about Magic Pill is how Johann Hari, as a journalist, brings in deep investigative lens to the complex issues, unpacking science, ethics, economics, and lived experience in a way that's both accessible and thought-provoking. If you enjoy that style of storytelling, I've got 2 more recommendations for you. Breakthrough by Janet Reardon. It's a compelling investigative account of the development of insulin. This book reveals the remarkable story behind one of the medicine's greatest life-saving discoveries and the complex scientific, ethical, and economic challenges involved. And another recommendation, this time a work of fiction that explores our relationship with food, is Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. Set in a climate-ravaged future, it delves into how food becomes a symbol of privilege, power, and survival, raising unsettling questions about consumption, scarcity, and desire. If you've got thoughts about the episode, a book recommendation, or a guest you'd love to hear from, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. This is Gunjali, and thanks for joining the Changemakers Book Club.